Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's been is enjoying a nice weekend so far, and I also hope everyone's been enjoying the nice Rgltv Halloween Horror Marathon so far. Tonight rather, I should say. First up will be a bit of a series quite unknown for various reasons, called Citadale. There were actually 5 games in the trilogy, but today we will be covering all 3. We will be covering the first 3 games. It's a Castlevania clone of sorts, quite lighthearted, but it seems to be, I believe they spent more of the time on the story, on the element of the story, than the gameplay itself. You'll see what I mean very shortly. Now, I was trying to think of a way to actually explain the synopsis of each game, since there's some various texts within the game and before each game. So I'm just going to let that text play out so that everybody can understand the story. With that, starting in 3, 2, 1, go. The story that you're reading usually takes up about a minute and a half or so for each game. So we might go over a bit of estimate, but it's to get a better understanding of the story than I would be able to explain. Okay, so now that the lore of the first game has been shown, the stages in general, the character Sonja all of the characters use swords. Sonja has the sword called the Demon Blade, which is used to protect the town from various monsters that appear. Gameplay-wise, a lot of the stages you'll see a lot of the same enemies throughout most of the games. You'll hear various of sounds pretty much taken straight from Castlevania completely. There's also, at least in this game, there's very little ammo for weapons, and no matter what you have, your weapons along with the sword only do one damage to any boss. And a lot of the stages are very short too. the best you can really hope for is to try to keep as much health as humanly possible for bosses, because in most stages you'll only have access to one refill of health, which is only a small chunk of it, and you get nothing else. So to recap, you'll have almost no refill of health for most stages. You have very limited ammo access, very little weapon ammo access as well. But you will take a lot of damage from various enemies in the game, bosses especially. Now, as far as those coins that are being dropped, recently I didn't know what those coins were for, but only to find out that you need to have a certain amount of coins gained before you face the Dark Lord, along with some other requirements in order to access a bit of an alternate ending. But the alternate ending is not that much of a difference from the 80% ending, which we will be doing today. A lot of the bosses, they're very lackluster, very uninspiring. The movement, depending on what boss you're facing, could be RNG. But once again, you want to keep as much health as possible, just in case you really do get some really bad movement RNG, because as you can see just how much life you can lose. In this particular game, you have access to for some reason this game decides to give you a checkpoint, and some sort of a checkpoint in the middle of a stage, but then they decide to abandon that in the next two games that we'll be seeing soon. You can choose to jump over, because Sonja has quite a high jump. You can choose to jump over enemies, but a lot of them will follow you. So since it barely takes much effort to actually defeat most enemies, the more you leave on the screen, the worse it might be later on, especially if you've already bypassed wherever your health is. This is the healing item of the game. And this friendly skeleton shows us why this is the broken overpass. Thank you. Now with this particular boss, you have to stay in place to lure it to actually rise. But you don't want to stand in the same spot too long, because there'll be some kind of a weird beetle that shows up after every hit. And as you can also see, there are the remains of various enemies that look pixelized actually will hurt you. You'll see that quite often in this series. And remember what I said earlier about not having much access to ammo for most items in the series. At least starting out, that's true. They started to change that a little bit in the third game. While it would have been nice to be able to do more hits per cycle, unfortunately, the more hits, that huge odd worm or whatever you want to call it is, the more of those beetle creatures that will show up. For the majority of these stages, the major usage of stopping to collect, to hit all these candles is mainly just for the ammo. Now, unfortunately, there's no way the path is blocked by this kind of a odd wall master, so that's the only usage for having the axe. And the wall master has to be hit 5 times for platforms to appear. Fortunately, you don't have to worry too much about spiders, but most other enemies that you do decide to jump over will come back. Now, whatever that is in the center, nothing out of the ordinary, right? Wrong. While you still have mosquitoes attacking you, you'd rather take a hit from those than the boss itself. And if you somehow even try to back the boss into the corner, it actually will jump forward, which is one of the reasons why you want to have the healing item and possibly as much ammo as you can, just in case you actually get hit, because you may not even see the attack coming while you're trying to hit it, just so you can be prepared to jump back. Now we're in the castle Citadel. Get used to the sight of this castle. You will be seeing a lot of this referenced for all of the games. You go inside the gate and a couple of zombies are waiting. Very easy to take care of. But one particular new monster appears. Just wants to ask you a couple of questions, but don't let the axe hit you. So Sonja manages to... So once you dispatch the rest of these monsters, the soul escaped deeper into the castle. She finds her husband, who never returned home. So you have a bit of a ways to before you reunite at the very top of the castle. So unfortunately, this is where your healing, this is where your extra health is. Fortunately, it's not too much of the stage to go. Now, these moving eyes, they're very slow, but just like the bats in this game, they're very persistent, and even if you do decide not to get rid of them when you first see them, they will show back up. Now this is probably the most annoying boss in the game, and actually for the first 3 games I would say, as there are different varieties of them. Also a boss that has a lot of random movement. And just like the weird worm looking boss earlier, this is one boss you hope will just bounce high. It's very erratic. What you really want the boss to do is to bounce extremely high that it hits those spikes. If it does that, then you won't have to come out of your safe spot where the left entrance is. But even if you're in that safe spot, the eye has such erratic movement that you never know what it's gonna do. Now, for the first game, there is an alternate ending, but it requires you to collect a certain amount of coins before you face the Dark Lord, which is Sonja's husband's father. The other requirement is to find a so-called hidden spider that I'll at least show you where it is. A bit tougher than the average large spider that was seen earlier. And you also have to not die on the last stage with the eye or this one. And what happens as a result, that would be the so-called hidden spider. What happens as a result of that alternate ending doesn't differ much from the regular ending that you'll see shortly. But there is a complete extra stage, which is a mirrored version of this castle with some tougher enemies and the true version of the Dark Lord, which is actually quite troublesome. Yes, very poverty CB. Now, unfortunately, you can't do anything about these ghosts, but that is one of the reasons why I have the healing item. This is a room that will give you some health and all the weapons that are in the game. And see, remember what I said about those floating eyes from earlier? Even if you don't get rid of them at first, they will show up again. Now the reason why there's no movement, there's actually supposed to be text, and sometimes it doesn't show up at all for this particular conversation before you face the Dark Lord. So I should be able to move in another couple of seconds once the text is actually finished. The game also, for the few people that did make it, it's a bit on the glitchy side, which also might be another reason why it may not be as known. So I'm just waiting for the invisible conversation to end, where the text boxes are supposed to be shown. So I can actually move. There we go. That whole conversation was Sonja's husband, was kind of immortal, doesn't really want to have to fight the Dark Lord, his father. So Sonja volunteers to do so. Now this is probably the laziest version of any form of clone Dracula. Does nothing but send out spiders and bats. And there is no second form or anything, unless you count the true version of the Dark Lord once, if you were going for the alternate ending. So the only difference ending-wise for this game, if in this particular instance, all of the Dark Souls have gathered, in which I will let you read. This text always shows up. The Gate of Souls in the any percent ending, someone has to close it. So Sonja's husband will go. If you were going for the alternate ending, Sonja decides to go in to get rid of the Dark Lord, just so that they'll be able to be together. But they won't. Even after that happens, they're not together all that much longer, just to make sure that the Dark Lord doesn't appear again. So since unfortunately that would have taken a bit longer time just to go for that alternate ending, I'm just going to let the text finish for this game, and then we can start on the next chapter for Citadale. See, unfortunately, Sonja's husband somebody has to go in to either deal with the true version of the Dark Lord or somehow close the gate, but there's no way to get back. And usually after each game, you're treated to the castle is going under the remains of which should hopefully never be seen again. And now for chapter 2, which takes with each chapter that happens, a lot of time has transpired since the events of the last game. So here's some more story lore text. Okay, now for Citadel Chapter 2. Now, some things they decided to change from the first game. You're now playing as the son of Sonja, who is looking for his brother, who has not returned. So they decided, starting in this game, to do away with checkpoints in the stages. But the only way you see anything is to actually reach the boss, no matter how long or short the stage is, with the exception of the third stage, where there's nothing at all. And there's usually some kind of, for some of the stages, there's usually some kind of there's usually something that you have to do in order to make the boss actually appear. In this case, it was to get rid of what looked like scarecrows. that was somehow tied to weird trees or something. Now, unlike the eye dragon boss that actually, the dragon bone boss that actually drops skeletons to distract you, this boss does nothing. Now in this game, since there's no stage checkpoints, if you were to get to the boss and you died, a convenient warp opens, which will take you straight from the beginning of the stage right back to the boss. But if you wanted to have weapons or ammo for the boss, then you'll need to go back through the stage again, which, depending on the stage, it could or could not be a problem. In this particular stage, what you needed to do in order for the boss to appear was to find that hidden cocoon that was just below your starting point. Even though that's not a very hidden cocoon at all. The real hidden cocoon would be this boss, but you don't have to worry about attacking it. But there will be, but in the same spot where that hidden cocoon was, there are spiders coming from the very middle, but all you have to worry about are the larger spiders. Small enemy, you won't take much health loss, but if you hit anything that much bigger, then you will definitely take a lot more damage. So try to avoid the sprites of much bigger enemies at all costs. Yeah, I think they did a good job with the music. This particular stage actually doesn't have a checkpoint warp at all, since it's even shorter. For some reason they decide not to give you one, even if it's just as short as the first stage. But unlike the bone enemy boss, what you have to face is much more annoying. Now the objective, because there's no way you'll see the boss without getting rid of all the weeds. So you have to go to the left first, because there's a huge metal item that would be right here to your right that will prevent you from seeing the boss. Just as annoying as the eye in the first game. Much bigger too. Now, all I can hope is that the eye won't move erratically. Because the eye bosses are known for moving more erratically than anything else. Fortunately, since the stage is not long at all, it won't take much time to get back to the boss. And remember what I said in the first game about... Remember what I said in the first game about you want as much health as possible for the bosses, just because you don't want to come in contact with those sprites. While it's a good thing the characters do have a high jump, sometimes you can just not clear a spike just enough. I usually just let that particular ghoul just move toward the spike so I don't have to lose any more health. Now, as long as I don't get a really bad movement pattern from the eye, I should be okay now. I try to make usage of the holy water, even though it's not going to be all that useful, while hopefully being able to attack it with the sword as well. But other than that, holy water is just like, because you only have access to holy water in the Shuriken stars, but either are pretty much useless. See, there's that erratic movement I was speaking about. Sometimes you never know just how some of the bosses will move. That boss took much longer than it should have. See, even Gabriel feels the same about the eyes. So Gabriel and his mother Sonja meet up after he defeats the eye. She's going to go to the top of Citadale Castle to look for her other son, while Gabriel goes to the laboratory to see what monster remains. There's honestly not too much to this particular stage outside of the usual summer monsters that you see normally. And collecting enough ammo. some of the monsters it's safe to jump over because even if they chase you, they're very slow. But if there's a ton of them on screen and you end up being surrounded, then you'll probably regret the choice later. Now you might be wondering what exactly is that in the background. Everybody say hello to the Frankenstein boss who wasn't, and enter whatever this is supposed to be. Your target is to hit the smaller enemy, and honestly, I do not want to know whatever that larger item is. I honestly don't remember when I first played it whether or not it was a one-hit KO, but I decided honestly not to find out. So while all I can do is just wait for this smaller enemy to come down just to hit it, holy water would be useless, and unless I happen to have those shuriken stars, there's nothing for me to do but wait for the smaller enemy to come within striking distance of the sword. This would probably be the one time if you actually did die to the boss, the warp would actually be very useful from the beginning because you don't need ammo or a special weapon that would make the fight easier. Now for the entrance hall, there's a reason why there's actually no major boss here, but there's a reason why pest control was shown. Three of those large scorpions you have to get rid of, which actually serves as some sort of a boss. And they're honestly not even a threat because you don't have to worry about, you won't get close to them to be hit by the tail. You won't need any special weapons or ammo here. Other than that, very short stage, even more so, because since you're not meeting up with any boss, but unfortunately, something has happened to Sonja. Kind of a somber way to end the stage. Sandra's unfortunately is dying. Her sword is in the last room, but we have to trigger a switch that we can't reach right away in order to get it. And obtaining that sword from Sonja actually affects the ending, which is actually nothing more than one more boss fight against your brother, but very lackluster. And this is probably the first time in general that you'll actually, as long as you stop to hit the majority of the candles and even get rid of a few enemies here and there, you'll have plenty of ammo for the one weapon that's actually useful. The switch that's actually being triggered actually triggers 2 gates. There's a gate upstairs, and also the gate in order to get the demon blade from Sonja. It's amazing how just having that one item can affect having two minor different endings. And the weapon that's actually useful, or that it will actually get used for once, will be the Shuriken Star. Despite the fight being lackluster, it's much better having the star instead of trying to use the sword. If you actually need health, it's in here, which is nice to have it very close to the boss. I was hoping this weird enemy would float upwards, but it had to go. More story incoming. Now you would think that Rogul, with his new acquired power, would have better aim than that. This is the reason why I specified you would rather have the weapon than have to attack with your sword. If you had to attack Rogul with your sword, that means you'll have to follow much closer to the sprite, and sometimes Rogul does jump. Now, without Sonja's sword, the game you would see some of the same text, but the game would end. But if you do have Sonja's sword, Rogul unleashes his so-called true power. A very lackluster fight. See how you'll actually still have ammo left over if you collected enough. I'm not honestly sure what he means by true power, but this definitely isn't it. Come down here. Thank you. I know the ETA said it was an hour for all 3 games, and we're only just done with the second game, but there was quite a bit of story elements that needed to be shown. So once again, well, not once again, but Rogul has been defeated. Citadale Castle, with memory of his brother that's long gone. And now for chapter 3, Legacy of Fate, and more story. In reality, I probably should have specified the ETA would have been a bit longer, but it's not that much longer. Maybe 1:15. So now in the third game, you're now the son of Rogul, who was actually trained by the protagonist Gabriel from the second game. The same premise pretty much follows from the second game, mechanic-wise, but this Christopher actually was very adept in magic usage. So this blue orb weapon can be used, has unlimited power, but the only catch is you have to be at full health to use it. But it will actually prove useful for at least 2 bosses. So unfortunately, something has happened to Gabriel. Now that's just mean. And you'd have to have had quite a lot of training to get hit by an axe, take a huge fall like that. And still live. So this boss is just a lonely tree with faces that appear every so often. And once you hit a face, enemies will come out, depending on the face that's shown. So unfortunately, since I got hit, I no longer have access to the blue fire orb. That's a few too many spiders. Now once you do the last hit, you can just walk to the right to the end of the stage. And if there were any flying enemies like those bats, they'll still chase you. No, you cannot die during that cutscene, fortunately. That would be terrible. Now, just like a certain Castlevania Game Boy game, you can actually choose what stage you want to go to. Now, this being the remains of Citadale Castle, you actually won't get far into it unless you get rid of the bosses in these other 3 stages first. So unlike the last 2 games, now the game decides to actually give you tons of ammo for weapons that you need, and it's actually a good thing that they did. Because there are some bosses you just don't want to deal with without weapons, or at least without certain weapons. Like in this particular case, I was supposed to keep the axe, but I believe there's another axe along the way, so this won't be too bad. If it wasn't for how certain bosses were, the blue fire orb would actually be a great weapon for everything. Here we go. Now Axe hasn't been particularly useful in the past, even if there was ammo, but that's because there are bosses that really, maybe with the exception of the eye, you really didn't have much of a usage for the axe. Now, you definitely need the axe. And also, a la Castlevania 2 Game Boy, once you reach a certain area within the stage, the music changes before you reach the boss. Now, you don't actually have to worry about the boss itself, just except for the fire, and if you're close enough, the remains. The axe actually proves very valuable for double hits like that, just because of the movement pattern. So unless you actually decided to just use the demon blade, why use a short range attack when you can have a long range attack that arcs? Now they say these are abandoned mines, but nope. If they really were abandoned, you'd be able to find a boss almost immediately. And you see that eye refuses to give up the chase. So I can leave it behind for now, but it will show up in a later room somewhere. Now, unfortunately, the boss of this level is an annoying one we've seen for the past 2 games. But having the blue fire orb, since Christopher is really good with magic, as long as the boss doesn't move in a really awkward pattern, it's much easier to deal with now. As long as I don't get hit. And even if I do get hit, I would like to have already taken off half health if necessary. Because unlike the first game, there's no major safe spot. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe there's a backup weapon anywhere. good thing there's health along the way. Because if I want to make usage of the blue fire orb, I need to be at full health. I believe there's health right down here. Yep. So I definitely do not need to take another hit. Because unfortunately there's no health to be found. As soon as I say that, the bat hits me. Thanks, bat. As unfortunate as that is, now I have to just deal with the eye. Without the weapon. I think there's holy water right here. Yep. So this is the only other method. This is the old method that I used to use before the eye. It takes much longer because I have to hope that the eye won't just... I'm hoping that the eye will hit the holy water as it lands. But it can also decide to move where it wants. Okay. I wouldn't have been able to take anything more than one extra hit. Personally, I'm not sure why they call this the prison tower. Quite honestly, I consider this laboratory 2 for a reason. And you'll see why once I reach the boss. It's a good thing there's plenty of candles along the way. This is the one time the holy water... Well, actually, no, that's not true. This is the first instance where holy water will be invaluable. Yes, definitely make sure your clocks are set back an hour if they're not already. Fortunately, there's not much to this stage. With the exception of just making sure I have enough ammo for holy water. I did try using the blue flame orb against this boss earlier. It's terrible. Oops, okay. I thought I accidentally picked up another weapon that I didn't want to use. It's only too bad that there's no such thing as having multipliers of a weapon. Could you imagine how useful Holy Water would be in this game? Especially with this much ammo. As much as I would like to be able to use the... Oh wait, I'm just now thinking about the wrong stage. I wanted the axe for this. That might be a problem. I was supposed to pick up the axe, not the holy water. And this is the reason why. The axe would allow me to hit all the segmented parts evenly. Other than that, I would have to make usage of those lifts. So there's no way I can avoid not taking a death. I would have to use those lifts, and there are spikes on the ceiling too. So here's the instance of a warp that appears. I can't immediately use that to get right back to the boss. But if you use that, you're skipping the entirety of the stage, and you won't have barely any weapons or ammo to use, depending on what you're fighting. A very light-hearted Castlevania clone. I believe more time was spent on the story. I think I missed a certain candle earlier that was supposed to give me an axe. So I definitely want to make sure I pick that up this time. I was thinking about the next stage where I needed the holy water. That was the candle I was supposed to... that I bypassed the first time. So as much as I really wanted to use the warp to immediately go right back to the boss, trying to fight that boss without the axe, not a good idea. And you'll see why once I get back to it. With the axe, you don't have to worry about. With the axe, you don't have to worry about using the lifts. Just get rid of the mosquitoes. It's unfortunate that the ammo for the axe does consume a bit more than some of the other weapons. I meant to remember that that the axe was there instead of the one that I picked up earlier. If I had remembered that, I would already be through with the next stage. So that's definitely more than enough ammo. So now that I'm finally back at the boss, I don't have to deal with those lifts. Just let the axe do the work. It's a slow moving axe, but the arc makes it very useful against that boss. After so many years, we're right back in Citadale Castle again. It doesn't look like it definitely looks like it's seen better days. And you have to go all over the castle to get rid of a couple of crystal barriers in order to reach the boss. I believe there's 4 or 5 of them. And unfortunately, if you don't get rid of the crystals, you can't, then you're just gonna find a locked gate. Remember this room? This is where Rgltv first appeared. It's a shame that if you really need health, it's very far. This is the one instance that it's very far from the boss. Yeah, Rgltv just wanted power. if you wanted to use the healing item, for some reason, this is the one game you really don't have a usage for the healing item. Just because there are weapons. Because any of the other weapons that exist in this game are more useful than being able to heal. And anytime you can attack long range, over the very short range of the Demon Blade sword that you use is much better. So now with those 3 crystal barriers out of the way, now the holy word that I need is just one room below. It would be right there, but you have no way of surviving that fall if you went to your left without instantly landing on the spikes. So you have to go the long way around. Now this particular boss I feel is definitely for the laboratory. I don't know what manner of creation that boss could be, but it's very slow. It's very slow, but you don't want to come in contact with it. And even holy water is barely. Holy water will at least keep it from reaching you all the way in the corner. Just because it can do multiple hits. Now this area is very short. So even if I somehow manage to die, it doesn't take long to get back to the boss. Oops, I did not want that weapon. That's probably gonna cost me. It's not safe to try to jump over it. Most likely I'm going to end up taking a death. So you finally see your father Rogul for the first time, and you see Gabriel, who's basically been your father figure and trained you. So unfortunately, you have to fight Gabriel before you can fight Rogul. the worst part about this fight is you can only take 4 hits. And the major reason why I want holy water here is because just so, because Gabriel is gonna chase after you wherever you go, so you want to be able to damage him while running and hopefully being able to clear the jump of his sword. Any other weapon or item is useless. Close combat, definitely don't want to do it. Because you'll get hit for 1/4 health each time while you're barely doing any damage to him, and you still have to fight Rogul afterwards. See, that's how troublesome dealing with Gabriel is. But it's the only proven method I've been able to make work. And even that's not completely safe. Almost got the Bruce Fire Orb again, which I don't want. My main hope is that I jump at a particular arc so that I don't get hit by the sword. There we go. So now another battle against Rogul. Still very lackluster, just like the last game. Holy water would be useless against him. You can actually use the demon blade. The only thing you want not to do is to come in contact with the sprite, or else I'll have to go through all this again. So Rogul just floats very slowly. Occasionally eight-wave flames will show up. if I can avoid being hit by the fire, great. As long as I don't accidentally hit as long as I don't actually hit the Rglt's sprite. Exactly. It's fortunate that Rglt doesn't actually come directly in the corner. But hey, at least he learned how to somewhat utilize the fire attack. I apologize about the ETA. There was a lot to explain. Even though it was easier to let the game explain. So the family has defeated Rglt for the third time. There are 2 more games in the series which are separate from the trilogy. And those unfortunately are taking quite some getting used to. And it's from what I'm finding out so far, they're much harder. And unfortunately, they have some control problems too. But that is Citadale, the Legends trilogy, which consists of the first 3 games. Next up will be Predator 2. I'll be back shortly.